All right, I think there we are.
Cool.
Confident.
Yeah, it says live, so I think it's working.
Great. Okay, welcome to the show, everybody. Um, yeah, it's my pleasure that it finally works out to make these hangouts. So, my name is Felix, and yeah, welcome to this hangout. Daniel, why don't you start with introducing yourself? I guess you do a better job at that.
Okay, well, I'm Daniel, and I'm a student at the University of Texas at Austin, and for the past few years, I've been doing Bitcoin stuff. Um, some friends and I started the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute, which you can see at nakamotoinstitute.org. We've collected a lot of the cypherpunk classics. And we also have a blog with some, modern commentary on the fruit of the cypherpunk movement. Our goal with the Nakamoto Institute is to keep the anarchist wing of the Bitcoin movement from being marginalized, to provide a voice for it, and to make sure that the cypherpunk ideas are not forgotten. So many people in the Bitcoin world don't even know what was going on with the cypherpunks, and they don't realize that Bitcoin is an invention that developed after much trial and error, and out of many ideas that were discussed on the cypherpunk mailing list.
Yeah, right. So you think that the creators of Bitcoin, they were actually some of the cypherpunks? Do you think?
So, not Satoshi Nakamoto is the pseudonym of someone whose identity is not known, but
Right.
we do know a few things about him from his writings, and he was certainly familiar with cypherpunk writings. I mean, it seems likely that he has a history with the cypherpunks, and we know this because of the citations in his paper describing the design of Bitcoin. He cited a lot of cypherpunk writers, and he cited papers that only appeared on the cypherpunk mailing list. So I think we can say that Bitcoin is a cypherpunk um, invention, and we know that it's based on cypherpunk ideas. We don't know exactly what Nakamoto's political ideas are, but there certainly are hints that. Well, of course, we know that the cypherpunks were mostly anarchists, lots of libertarian anarchists, and Nakamoto put a headline about the British banking system in the Genesis block. So there are hints that he's probably an anarchist and probably trying to take down the banking system with Bitcoin.
Okay, I think we can get into that later as well. Again, why don't you tell us again a bit more about how you became a crypto anarchist? I guess you've been an NCAT before.
Yeah,
The Bitcoin thing started even.
yeah. I
And
read lots of Murray Rothbard a few years ago, so I was way into that. I first learned about Bitcoin in 2010, but I didn't get any then. I got in during early in the first mania in 2011,
still
because
great, still
see
great
that
time to.
this was. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I could see that there was real monetary phenomenon happening. Um, during that time, and that's what convinced me that Bitcoin was a real thing. At the time, I didn't know about the cypherpunks and about the history, but later in early 2012, there was a talk at my school, the University of Texas at Austin, that was given by Cody Wilson, and this is kind of fun for me because the whole talk is recorded on YouTube and you can see it. And this was the first time that I had heard the word cryptoanarchy, and Cody Wilson told me what book to read to get into it. So and after that, I knew that I had to know everything about it. So so after that point, I was all gung-ho cryptography and cypherpunk stuff. So now, cryptoanarchy is a word invented by Timothy May, one of the early cypherpunks, and so some good writings to start getting into this. There's a Cypherpunk Manifesto by Eric Hughes. Pretty much everything by Hughes is really good, and there is well, now I don't remember what it's called, but go to the Nakamoto Institute page, and you can also read Timothy May's short essays. He wrote an extremely long book called The Cyphernomicon. It's basically a very long FAQ that contains it's a summa of all cypherpunk ideas. That's a difficult one, but you'll get kind of a comprehensive idea of the early cypherpunk ideas from that.
Yeah, there's also been some white papers I heard. I didn't find the time to look into them in preparation for this. I'm pretty new myself to this cryptoanarchy. I've been following everything with Bitcoin in the last year or so, but I just discovered this cryptoanarchy concept through you guys, the Nakamoto Institute. And I'm super excited about it, and I think it doesn't at all get the exposure that it deserves, really.
Well, we're working on that. Don't worry.
yeah, that's what we're doing right here. So I want to encourage everybody, if you want to bring in some questions, you can either type them in the box, and I try to read them, or if you have audio, you can just join the conversation at any point, of course. So, yeah, what else? Do you have like a technical background? Are you like a programmer also? Are you working on the blockchain?
Yeah, I'm working on a degree, a master's degree in software engineering, and I have a good grounding in cryptography. I've read a lot of books on the subject because I wanted to learn all about it, and right now I'm writing a book called Cryptoanarchy, so I'd better understand that. But yeah, I can tell you all about just the basics of cryptography, and I can also tell you how it fits into cypherpunk ideas. So, well, why don't we the Nakamoto Institute link here? So here we've got, these are our cypherpunk writings, nakamotoinstitute.org/literature. So we try to keep only classics here. Everything here is really good.
Yeah, of course.
The most important
of the video.
The two most important people, I think, are David Chaum and Nick Szabo. These are these people are the real deep thinkers of the group, I think.
Yeah, everybody's invited to get deeper into that. We'll post the links in the description of the video as well. But can you maybe sort of outline for somebody who's not familiar with this topic, where we are in modern cryptography today. Like there are all these Bitcoin enthusiasts who say it's really too late to be stopped, even if the government tried to shut it down. It would be a secure, manipulation-proof network. I'm myself not sure about that, because you never know what the future holds, and I don't have the technical expertise to have like a good opinion on that, So could you maybe sort of outline where we're at in cryptography?
Okay, well, I mean, there's a couple of different things you talked about. So, um, well, let's first talk about what cryptography is good for. Now, right now, the U.S. government can basically monitor the entire internet, and if they wanted to, they could get into your computer and get pretty much whatever they want out of it. It's really very difficult to really secure a device so that nobody can get into it. The value of cryptography is that we can use it to prevent targeting people. So the idea is that we try to make communications over the internet so meaningless that the government can monitor it without knowing who to target. That's sort of the realistic goal here. And there's a common objection where people say, oh, they have all of the genius cryptographers. They have all these tricks. They can get into your computer. That's true, but we can work on preventing them from knowing which computer to try to break into. They don't have the resources to target everybody. So if they don't know who to target, then we can be safe. Now, as to Bitcoin, Bitcoin transactions are based on the idea of what's called a digital signature, and this is I have a message, and I can attach a little string of bits to it that that indelibly prove that the message belongs to me, that I reviewed it and I attached the signature to it, which I approve of it. It's it, we, this can't be replicated by other people, even with all of the computing resources of the entire world. It's not possible. That's sort of the value of a cryptographic system of property rights, which is basically what Bitcoin is. We have a list of who owns what, and this list cannot be tampered with without someone detecting. Right now, our systems of property rights, like our property title registries, they're just based on words, and if the registry is altered, or if someone with a lot of clout, like the government, can crosses out entries and just changes them however they want, there's not much we can do about that. But this can't be done with Bitcoin.
The blockchain, right?
Right. That is the distributed database that contains all of the transactions. So because Bitcoin is designed to be an anonymous system, anyone with computing resources can contribute to the network. So there is a potential problem that someone with a lot of computing resources can can disrupt the network. And this is known as the 51% attack, but actually there are things that you can do with less than 51%. In general, the more of the network you control, the more you can disrupt it. But there's also a corresponding issue that when you start to add computing resources to the network, you increase the security of the network. So if you're adding small amounts of computational power to the network, you are making it more secure against other potential attackers. So
Right.
let's say China and the US both decide they want to control Bitcoin, and they try to add lots of computers to the network. Well, they're sort of canceling each other out. And the way that we describe a system like this is we say that it's anti-fragile. And there's a very good book by Nassim Taleb called Anti-Fragile. What it means is that you have a system that benefits from attempts to break it. That's what Bitcoin is. So as long as the various governments of the world are trying to break Bitcoin without creating a big enough attack to really destroy it, they're actually improving the Bitcoin network. So there's a real sort of double-edged sword, right? From attacks on Bitcoin, maybe you'll be able to hurt it, but if you don't, you're actually helping it. So I think that there are reasons. I mean, I think that government officials will begin to understand this property, and they'll start to realize that they can benefit a lot more by just buying Bitcoins for themselves than by sticking with their own groups and helping to attack. Bitcoin sort of gives them an offer, a very good offer that to defect, because the earlier you defect, the more you benefit, right?
Of course.
And this is of course because as Bitcoin becomes more adopted, the price of Bitcoin goes up. So if you are an early defector from government, you can benefit more by getting into Bitcoin than if you are late.
Okay, so let's go into the blockchain a little bit. From what I understand, it's a decentralized P2P network that's verifying the information from different sources, and this makes it good against an attempt to control it centrally, right?
Yeah. So there's this so there are these people called miners, and they are attempting to generate valid blocks on the network. So it's called a blockchain because it is a chain of these data structures called blocks, and there's minutes last 10 minutes worth of transactions.
Sorry, the audio just got lost for like 2 seconds. Can you repeat that, please?
Okay, so there's the blockchain. It is a chain of data structures that are called blocks. each one contains transactions for the last 10 minutes, and they come out on average once every 10 minutes. When a miner generates a valid block, he gets to own the new bitcoins that come with. There's a big schedule. It halves every 4 years. So right now you get 25 bitcoins if you mine a block. That's quite good. That's around $15,000, I guess, right now. Quite nice. And in about a couple years or so, that amount will halve to 12.5. Now, there is this concept called the difficulty, and there's basically a make work program that goes along with block generation. You have to expend computing resources to generate a block, and we can verify that you've done this because the block is required to have a hash that satisfies certain properties. Specifically, the value of the hash must be less than a certain amount, and as the difficulty goes up, the hash must be lower and lower, which means that it's more and more difficult to generate. This hashing is not a useful operation. It doesn't do anything. The verifying the transactions, that takes no time at all. It's doing this hashing that takes up all the time.
Okay.
And the reason we do this is that only one block should come out every 10 minutes. So as more resources are added to the network, the difficulty becomes greater and greater schedule to be met. So a good metaphor, I think, is if you think about a forest, the trees all have to become higher and higher in order to get enough light. Because if one tree gets higher than the rest, the others have to move up to compete with it. So all of the trees would like it better if they didn't have to grow so high. Because they're in competition with one another, there's a certain height that they have to attain. That's the work that's done with each block. Okay. And there's an idea in biology called the handicap principle, and there's a book by Zahavi, an Israeli biologist that's very good that I would recommend. And the idea of this book is that in order for a signal to be meaningful, it must be costly. And this is the principle behind Bitcoin mining. In order for you to be given some kind of clout on the network, you must prove that you've spent resources. And the person who is able to spend the most resources has the most say over what happens on the network. Now, let me just add that the miners do not get to create transactions. They can't just take your bitcoins or do things like that. But they get to choose which transactions go into the blockchain. So if you don't pay enough of a fee for a transaction, your transaction might not be verified for some time. Whereas if you include a fee, it'll get in there very quickly.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks. So when I heard about Bitcoin first, I assumed that it was kind of backed by calculating power, actually, that it would be like a network of computers where the calculating power was actually used and sold also for external purposes like science. And now there's a coin that does that, actually. It's called Gridcoin. Have you heard of that? And how does that come into play? Could this do you think it's a feature that makes sense? I think it does. And would it also be possible to implement this in the Bitcoin code still?
Well, so I haven't heard of the coin that you're talking about, but you should really read. Let me just get some links here, but I think that all of these altcoins are you shouldn't get into them. I think that they're scams, and I don't think that they're good investments. So I've just posted a link to my article, "The Coming Demise of the Altcoins," and the reason you shouldn't get into altcoins is because there's no such thing as an equilibrium between currencies on the free market. A currency that is better at enabling people to be liquid, in other words, a currency that helps bring people together to make profitable transactions for one another, that is preferable to one which is not very good at helping people be liquid.
Yeah, that's also in theory as well, right? It's
yes,
basically just one currency.
In general, the bigger network is going to be preferable because it provides people with more liquidity. It enables more people to come together to make profitable trades. So I expect in the future that these altcoin experiments are not going to work out and that they're all going to remain marginal, and that Bitcoin is going to be the one that will succeed because it is overwhelmingly the biggest one, and I don't think that any of these other altcoins are able to provide something good enough that they can overtake Bitcoin's advantage. So say we invented some amazing new altcoin that was infinitely better than Bitcoin, we should expect that this new altcoin would completely overtake Bitcoin eventually. It wouldn't coexist. It would succeed completely. And I don't think that any altcoin has that potential yet. And yes, all the other coins. So I just suggest only getting Bitcoin, and don't pay attention to the other ones. So as for your question about being backing by computational work, that's effectively what Bitcoin is. It is provable that if you have a Bitcoin, it's provably difficult to replace that Bitcoin because the amount of computational work required to generate Bitcoins is quite high. It's a provable opportunity cost to have Bitcoins. The computational work behind it is not used for any particular purpose, but it is good for making Bitcoins economically scarce. And I would say that if you are attempting to use this work for other purposes, that isn't as good as a way of creating scarcity for Bitcoin. So I think it's important that the proof of work that's used to mine Bitcoins should be as useless as possible.
Oh, really? Okay. So
yes.
you don't think it makes sense to create like a network where everybody who has a wallet, if their CPU is not used, that calculating resource could be distributed and used for science, as I mentioned, for example. So you
Sure.
don't
Well,
think there's value in that?
Well, so here's what I would say we would do is you have a distributed system and people can contribute resources to, say, folding proteins or detecting extraterrestrial life signals. People contribute their computers, and other people could also donate bitcoins to that network, which would then be distributed to the people who contributed computing resources. But I don't think that it makes any sense to have a cryptocurrency that is itself generated by performing these kinds of calculations.
Mm. Okay, so then
so Julian Knuvitz asks, what about altcoins as crypto stocks? So the reason a currency has value is very different from the reason a stock has value. And I don't think that it is correct to treat altcoins as stocks. A stock has value because it's a contract, and it says that the bearer has rights to the resources of the underlying company under certain circumstances. They might get dividends, and they have the resale. If the company is liquidated, they have rights to some of what is sold in proportion to the value of the stock. A currency is not a contract, and it doesn't provide any of those terms. It's really just a token, and its value is the network of people using it. That's why Bitcoin is the most valuable, because it has the biggest network. And yeah.
I basically agree with you on the altcoins, but in the past, the Bitcoin has also implemented some improvements that people were able to make with the altcoins. So that was the question, if this could be also done with this computational thing, or are there, we can maybe put the question like this, are there basically limitations to what can be done with the code of Bitcoin? For example, it's in the code that there cannot never be more than 21 million Bitcoins, right?
Right.
So is this like something that can't be changed?
Well, so it's just a number in the code. So you could download the code and change the number if you wanted. You could add extra Bitcoins, but these would not be accepted by the network. You would be ignored, and your transactions would not be propagated. So you can change the code however you want, but the standard of 21 million cannot be changed unless everybody consents to making that change. And I think that the only changes that we can expect will actually happen are changes that benefit everybody, really changes everybody can agree to. And there aren't a lot of changes like that. If you're trying to change the number of coins, that would be something that would hurt some people and benefit others. So I don't think that changes like that can actually happen.
All right. We have another question from Peter. Should I just read it?
Yeah.
So,
well,
Peter,
he says. Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, he says, I have a question. What do I think of Bitcoin-OTC.com? Is it the web of trust of choice for crypto anarchists, or do you know better alternatives that are more easy to use for non-tech savvy users? Well, I'm sorry, I haven't used Bitcoin OTC, so I don't have an answer. But I use PGP, and that's kind of a complicated system, so I do hope that an easier one is developed. I'm pretty excited about Darkmail, which is being developed by funny name, so I don't. Ladar, that's his name, and he's the person who was running. What was that called? Let's see.
You might just add it to the links. Let's try to get.
Yeah, we'll add it to the links later. But he's developing a new email standard called Darkmail, which is going to be a little bit easier to use than PGP, and I really hope it catches on. It has a lot of very nice features that I'm quite excited about.
Okay. So next question. To me, it seems that most activity right now in the crypto world is around these altcoins. There's really a lot of people spending a lot of time and effort there, and I think it's kind of sad that these resources are not put into cryptoanarchy. I think it's probably because people try to get rich. They've seen what happened with Bitcoin, and they hope to create the next at least knock off that at least has like a 10,000% value increase or something maybe. And so I think the motivation for them is to get rich.
Yeah.
And instead they could become legendary if they would maybe make use of the possibilities that the cryptoanarchy approach of the blockchain gives us, right?
Sure. Well, the altcoin market is basically a regret market. It's for people who wish they had bought bitcoins earlier, and they're trying to pretend like that option isn't gone. But I would say they're still better off buying bitcoins now than buying altcoins now. Now I wrote an article called the correct strategy of Bitcoin entrepreneurship. I'll just post that one. And this one is sort of about how to get rich, well, just contributing crypto anarchist projects. I think that but there's still some really good stuff happening. There's some really great projects. There's a dark wallet that's being developed by Amir Taki, and Cody Wilson is involved in that, and they're doing all kinds of interesting things to make Bitcoin a little more anonymous. And there's a project called Open Bazaar, which is going to be very excellent when it starts working. It's basically a peer-to-peer network that allows for all kinds of Bitcoin-denominated contracts. It allows people to trade with one another. It's sort of like a Bitcoin Craigslist that's peer-to-peer, so it can't be taken down easily. There's going to be a similar thing that will be based on open transactions. I don't know when that's going to be ready, but I'll be excited to try that as well. And of course there are all of these new versions of the Silk Road that exists now, and each of those is getting successively. They're providing better and better security. So I mean, I think there's lots of great stuff still happening that you can get involved in.
Yeah, right. Okay, thanks. So crypto anarchy, basically, is there a group of people right now that are, except from you guys at the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute, are there like people actively following this and being excited about things like smart contracts and who else is in this movement? How many people are working on this kind of stuff?
Oh, there are lots of people. I don't know. I guess I couldn't tell you a number, but I mean, I know lots of people who are interested, but there need to be a lot more. I think that this should really be the focus of the entire libertarian movement. It's just so much more effective and has so much greater potential, than creating political parties and trying to change the state laws according to the official procedures. These ideas enable people to resist quite safely. They enable people to cooperate with one another outside the purview of the state and basically do things however they want. And I think that this is going to empower people much more than directly engaging with the state.
Yeah, right. Also, I think, but you should not also not challenge the state. I think. I guess we have to like we could theoretically set up a voluntary system on the internet, like for example a voluntary legal system that would just offer a voluntary alternative. Like I think we should not behave aggressive towards the state with this kind of technology and not fight them, but to basically
Exactly.
try to
Yeah.
replace them in a better way,
Yeah,
in a peaceful way as
just
well.
ignore them. Right.
So and Cryptoanarchy, it really gives us the tools theoretically to do this. So this is the big topic that I would like to get into, is how to exactly make it work. I've been spending a lot of time discussing and talking about, thinking about the monopoly of force and the legal system. And also,
Yeah.
I believe that even any currency is finally backed by the state, by the monopoly of force, by the ability to sue somebody in the legal system. This is what is, in my opinion, finally really the backbone of the society and the structure. So I'm not quite sure that the free market principle can be applied to the monopoly of force. So this is the big topic that I would like to get into soon, I guess. Anything else you have to add to these things?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think that the best way to get started, in these ideas is to read the writings of Nick Szabo, and we have a bunch of those on the Nakamoto page, and he has a lot more on his own page, although that it's actually down right now, so I don't know what happened to that. Fortunately, we still have some. So get started. He's a legal theorist, but he also understands cryptography. So he has a bunch of writings explaining how we can implement these legal ideas as a cryptographic system without requiring you to understand all of the computer science details of the ideas. And the next most important person I would say to read is David Chaum, and he is much more technical. You'll have to actually learn some cryptography in order to understand what he's talking about a lot of the time, but he's sort of the progenitor of the cypherpunk movement. He had most of the original ideas. They were later greatly extended, but basically all of the original ideas are his, and all of the things that we have today, like Tor and Bitcoin, started out with his musings. Although Bitcoin is very, very different from his original idea for digital cash. And also, I would suggest reading the articles on our blog. They're written for a less technical audience, generally speaking, and they're more current for as the way the movement is progressing today.
And these people are still actively working on these things. I think these papers, most cypherpunk papers, have been published in the 90s, right? Already?
Yeah, that was when most of the activity was, at 90s and early 2000s. Right now, the cypherpunk mailing list still exists, but it is it's just filled with spam. But Nick Szabo is still alive, and so are most of the cypherpunks. Hal Finney, well, now I don't remember if he's actually dead or not. I think he is. But most of them are still alive.
I didn't hear anything that he was dead.
Yeah, so he isn't dead yet, but he's kind of out of the picture, sadly. But yeah, most of them are still working. They still have their own projects, but most of the ideas that we are building off of were developed in the 90s. So so Jörn asks about the size of the blockchain. Right now it's 20 gigabytes, and it can take days to start a node. Right. So it's true that the blockchain has to get larger as more and more people join, and eventually it's going to be a lot bigger than it is now. But it's also the case that data storage is becoming cheaper and cheaper at a very rapid rate. So so I don't think that this is necessarily a problem, the fact that it's growing. We'll see what what we have to work with eventually. Now, as for downloading the blockchain, so if you're using Bitcoin Core, it can take days to get the blockchain because the software is verifying every single block. But there's an option that will make it work a lot faster that is turned on by default if you're using Armory. And so I would recommend getting the blockchain with Armory. It'll go faster.
Okay. Anything else about these blockchain, Bitcoin related things? Otherwise, I would like to get into this more theoretical future legal system stuff. So let me ask you, the book you are writing, Cryptoanarchy, it's going to be called, right? That is going to be like an overview of the process so far and the whole cypherpunk stuff that you already mentioned. Do you have like a special topic? Are you specializing in something in this field, or you're just trying to make like a general thing of it?
This is, it's basically a course in cypherpunk ideas for libertarians. So I've got all kinds of topics. The first section is really about agorism, just the idea of disengaging from the political process. So it's not really about cypherpunk stuff at all. It's about agorism, but that's kind of a necessary thing for people to start thinking about. Then I have a section that's just on cryptography, and then I have a section on anonymity systems and identity and authentication systems. So like Tor and PGP, how that stuff works. And then I have a section on the theory of money that combines the Austrian theory of money with Nick Szabo's ideas on collectibles. and also goes through the history of ideas on digital cash. And then I have a section on Bitcoin, and I conclude with a section on the free software movement.
Okay, I will definitely check out these people. Are there also like presentations of them on YouTube, or just the papers they published?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know about presentations from these people. There's a really good presentation that Michael Goldstein did on the history of the cypherpunks. It's like Bitcoin and anarchist experiment, and that'll introduce you to the cypherpunk ideas very well too. Let me just find the link to that.
Because that's what I'm interested in work, like thinking about these theoretical questions of legal system, monopoly of force. So I will keep stick to that and try to make contacts, because no anarcho-capitalist so far could explain in detail to me how they imagine the monopoly of force. Like, of course, they want it to be run by private security companies. They basically say just privatize it and that'll do it. But if once you dig a little bit deeper, I don't find actually answers. And my greatest hope is actually cryptoanarchy, that we can have like a code as a third party that can expose people in public, you know.
Here. So I posted Chaos Theory by Robert Murphy. That's not crypto-anarchist, but it's a very good book that tries to visualize distributed legal and defense business models as clearly as possible. And I'm going to post another article. Let's see. It's called Lex Cryptographia by Justice Ranvier, and there it is. That talks about how you would sort of build a legal system in using Bitcoin, and this is really the principle behind the dark, the open bazaar, and the open transaction version of that, which is just called Bazaar. So these writings are all very good to get you started on this stuff, and of course everything else on Justice's blog will be good for you to read. I think he's a very good writer.
So you are confident that there is a solution? Like, do you have a picture in mind of a working NCAP society where you have no worries about some company taking over, and basically anybody in charge of the monopoly of force is the state? So even if it's decentralized, that you have like judges and
right.
the other company has nothing to do with it. They just
I think that the thing that keeps the state in power is not the guns, but the ideology. The guns are important, but really if everybody just decided to rebel all at once, they wouldn't be able to do anything about it. It's the fact that people believe that this monopoly is right and legitimate that keeps it in power. So whereas if people are used to the idea of a polycentric legal system where everybody has their own insurance provider, I don't think that one business could just take over and that people would stand for that. I think that they would start competitors. And of course, if you have several security firms around in the same area, say one of them starts becoming evil and tries to take over, it's not like the others are going to sit back and allow it.
Yeah.
And of course
these arguments, of course, that's what I've been hearing also already. But the questions that it comes down to for me is like a long term. You have always this tendency that the executive grabs the power. We've been struggling with that as societies with over the last thousands and thousands of years, and there is never ever been anything proposed to effectively stop it. Like the separation of the powers of the state is basically the approach that would also be used in a crypto-anarchic approach, that these people have nothing directly to do with each other, but you can't help or stop people from collaborating and from making use of their possibilities. As far as I can see, I don't see any proof, or I'm not that sure this would not happen in an anarcho-capitalist society. And what I would be afraid of, that there would, for example, be emerging two big companies that provide better service than the others. They buy up the rest of the market, and then in the end they would basically fight each other with guns over legal issues, because there are basically two states. It could go in this direction. There's also, I don't see any, also not in crypto anarchy so far, as far as I dig in it now, I don't see anything that makes me really sure that we have the tools to stop this yet. I hope we have them, but I don't see it yet.
Okay, well, I think that, whatever happens, I think it's going to be a lot nicer if we have our anarchist society even for a short time. If it's not going to work, I would rather still be able to perform the experiment than not. So, and of course, I think that it will work. I really don't understand this fear of two big companies starting a war with one another. The stockholders of the companies are not going to be very happy about something like that. See, there isn't a concept of a present value for governments. So if a government does something that's very risky and puts its future finances in a very bad position, there isn't any immediate reaction that is going to tell people that there's something wrong. But with a corporation, a publicly traded corporation, if that corporation were to start managing its finances really badly and start doing something extremely risky, you would see an immediate decline in its stock price, even if these risks may be quite a long ways off. So, I think that there'll be strong reasons that a security firm would be disincentivized from trying to become corrupt, because there would be an immediate reaction to it in the stock price.
Yeah, I know that argument, of course, and I think it's a reasonable argument, definitely. But I still have doubts about it, and I'm still trying to get deeper in it. But we have a question here from Jörn. So he's asking, do you think of some kind of anti-monopoly protocol, Felix, so that a monopoly is not allowed by design? Yeah, basically, that's what I hope crypto anarchy can accomplish. That you have like an source of information on the net that is proof to any manipulation. That would enable somebody who violates the law to be exposed, because he could not change the code to justify his action. So it would be obvious that he's violating the law.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, I don't think we need to worry about cryptography to talk about this. In a polycentric legal system, anyone can be a lawmaker. So, I'm just someone sitting in my basement, and I write a bunch of laws. If people find that those rules are good for them to. It makes it easy for them to cooperate with one another. And then they adopt these rules, and they can't change the rules without somebody noticing. Because if there's one standard version, if somebody tries to use a non-standard version, it has to be voluntarily adopted by everybody else. So so there's really a disconnect between the lawmakers and law enforcers in an anarchist society, because the enforcers won't be able to enforce anything that isn't already established as kind of a standard.
Yeah, I think there's a very good chance that this is going to work out at least better than what we have, but it could also be worse. It's just we have to be careful with these kind of things, I guess. So Julian is saying, I'm Felix, you're basically talking about chances that in an anarchist society a state will emerge again. So ultimately we have nothing to lose. Yeah,
right.
That's a question of the definition of the state. For me, the state is defined by the monopoly of force. And this, I'm convinced you need, because even in a voluntary society, you have to make sure somebody is respecting the property laws. And if you don't have a guy with a gun, basically if everybody has a gun, it might change things, but you still have the problem that if you have nobody in the monopoly of force, if you don't have somebody that has that much guns and people, that nobody will try to fight him, then people will try to take advantage of violating property rights if they have the chance to do so. So I think the monopoly of force is necessary, and this is how it's been for thousands and thousands of years. The state is defined for me, and it's a common definition, I think, by the monopoly of force in a certain area. If you have a bunch of rockers or Muslims or whatever, an organized violent group taking over in a certain area, they don't need to have lawyers and judges. They become a new state. It's defined by the factual power of force, of violence. So I don't think we can get around that. I think this is needed. This is why I tend to be a minarchist, I guess, but I'm not quite sure, because I really hope that there's some solution for this, and I'm just trying to figuring it out. That's actually what brings me here.
I would like to say something. In my opinion, the state supersedes the community. It's a construct that goes beyond. You got multiple communities being ruled by a central power. That's what I see the state is, and I don't believe in the status quo.
Okay, well, let me just so if we were living in the Middle Ages in Europe, and you were talking about someone who takes power, you would just say, well, of course he'd become the king, because that's what they had back then. You wouldn't say that of course he would start a democracy or make a military dictatorship, because that's not how that's not what was considered natural at the time. Whereas of course now that is what you would probably do, and once people get the idea that democracy and statism are not natural, then I don't think you would necessarily expect someone who gains a lot of power to be able to create another state. I think it really requires people's passive cooperation, people's acceptance of these kinds of systems in order to have power over them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else coming up? Okay, let's just go into the next kind of topic. So this would be about kind of how to get there. Like how I imagine it is like not we can't of course enforce our ideas on the people out there, and they will also not just begin to pick them up within the next 5 years and all do use Bitcoin and whatever, you know. So the way I imagine would be what to do would be to build a thing on the internet, like a test balloon that is just for the people interested in it, and there we would experiment with the legal system, and we would try to solve conflicts between us, between the people interested in this, and we would try to start building something independent from the government, basically. And yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, so let me talk a little bit about strategy. So I have a couple of different ideas on this. First of all, we want to build systems that allow people to cooperate without creating central institutions that can be corrupted by the state. So an example of this is Bitcoin. I mean, at least we can't guarantee that it can't be corrupted by the state, but it's quite resistant. And another example would be Tor, the onion router. That's also something that's resistant, but not necessarily immune. So we need to start building systems like this that people can use to to resist safely. We kind of need to mass market the black market. Bring it to people's doorsteps in a way that's safe and that they're comfortable with, and that's inviting for them. There's also the factor with Bitcoin that I discussed earlier, that it actually provides an incentive for state agents to defect, because if they defect now and just become a servant of Bitcoin, then they're going to be better off than when they defect later. So there are also some more kind of intellectual strategies that I think we need to follow. Now, one of these is to tell people the true nature of the state, and by that I mean the reason the state remains in power is simply the expectation that it will exist tomorrow. That's the reason that people obey, is because they believe that the status quo will continue. So you can weaken the state by simply promoting the idea that the status quo is weak and that it can be defeated and that it might not exist tomorrow. So if you just imagine if there was this idea going around that the state would collapse, then the state agents, they would have a much stronger incentive to leave and to try to loot more out of the state as quickly as possible. In other words, they would accelerate that collapse if they just believed that it was possible or likely.
Yeah.
So there's also a long-standing trend toward less participation in violence, and of course I have more knowledge of this for the United States, but just as an example, in the United States we used to have black slavery, and then we had segregation, and then we finally got rid of that too. Now there's still lots of
freedoms to gain for us, of course.
There's still lots of violence by white people against black people in the United States, but it's confined to our massive prison systems, and it's more hidden from ordinary people. In other words, it's less participatory. In slavery days, everybody saw slavery all over the place. They had to at least passively accept it and not speak out about it. And now what we have, most people don't see at all, because if they did see it, they wouldn't, they would object. So there's a trend toward less participatory violence in society. That's a very good trend that we need to promote.
Right.
We need to just inculcate the idea that there shouldn't be any legitimate role for systematic violence in society, and that'll bring us closer to what we want. Those are basically my ideas on strategy. And of course, one last thing is to take the long view. Don't get too involved in day-to-day politics, because none of that is going to matter a few years from now. Try to promote the long-term trends that are in our favor. Take charge of those, and that's going to promote success a lot more, I think.
Yeah, right. Thanks. So of course I agree with the basic libertarian approach. That's the goal. But what I think is very important, to not see the state as the enemy. I think that's what many libertarians do, and I see it more as the best thing we've come up so far with. At least we are not fighting over food. We're not killing each other, and it's been a progress to get where we are today, and I would like to also recognize that. And I don't want to challenge the state. I don't think that's the right way to go forward. I don't think we can overthrow the government worldwide or something. We should just claim to be left alone by them. We should just claim certain specific areas where we interfere with their power in a very careful way, and I think that we will find in the end have to ask them to allow us to do that, to allow us to build a worldwide legal system. And in some governments they're not going to like it, and it's going to be illegal to use this software or whatever it's going to be. But we have to, I think, convince them with better ideas. I don't think even if we could kind of build something, we still need some sort of approval, I think, now from the side of the governments, and we should respect what's there in the world today, because we can't just overthrow all these people. We are just a very tiny fraction, and I think the opinions of the other people are legit, and if that's how they organize their lives, you cannot dictate them what to do. But what we can do is just to sort of claim for us that we want to be left alone in a certain way, and we want to claim the chance to make something different. You get the idea, I guess.
Yeah. Well, let me talk about. Yeah. Well, let me bring up some other idea on this topic. So, I think that what we want is to get non-libertarians to empathize with us, because if we just get lots of ordinary people who may not be libertarians, but who just say, well, let's let them have their polycentric legal system or whatever, then that is a victory, even if they don't agree with the idea. Just wanting to accommodate us, just to be sort of sympathetic. That's really all we need to win. And so I agree with some of what you're saying, but I still don't agree with engaging the state directly.
No, you wouldn't ask for permission. You would just do it, and yeah, of course, as long as nobody is interfering and we can just do it, of course. But eventually, it's going to get to a point where it's going to interfere with financial interests. Taxes is a question. We would have to claim, for example, not to pay taxes. This would be an issue, I guess.
Okay, well, anyway, I should get going, but thanks a lot for inviting me, and I really enjoyed our discussion, and I would certainly be available to have a talk with other libertarian groups if anyone is interested.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. It was really interesting to talk to you. I'm still amazed I can just talk to you like this. I was really impressed by your presentation. And yeah, great. Thanks. So there's still a lot of freedoms to gain for us, the young people of today. A lot of work in front of us. And yeah, I hope to meet you guys again, and I will make these hangouts regularly. There's this Google group. I will post a link, and yeah, anybody's invited to bring up some new topics that should be discussed, and we will decide what topic we're going to have next time in advance so that people can prepare. And yeah, please just spread the word, and I would love to have you guys again.
Okay, yeah, well, just go to the Nakamoto Institute and read all of that stuff. Nice meeting you all. Thanks very much.
Yeah, nice meeting you too.
Bye.
Much appreciated. Take care. All the best. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Carsten noch da?
Ja, ich bin noch da. Okay. Ich hab die ganze Zeit zugehört, obwohl ich gerade MMO spiele.
Okay. You know what? We can make another hangout maybe. Okay, bye bye.